season. Rabbit season. Rabbit season. Duck season. Rabbit season. I say it's duck season, and I say fire. Let's try that again.
Okay.
Welcome, spies, rebels, and security, to the 81st episode of an Unearthly podcast, featuring The Enemy of the World, written by David Whitaker, streaming live on twitch.tv/madmat2185 on the 19th of November, 2014. I'm pretty sure that's a run-on sentence, but there's just too many commas needed.
Mm-hmm.
I am Bill Sylvia, the Man in Black, and with me are Mad Matt Winchell.
I'm not dead yet.
Randy Ronson McCulloch.
Always a pleasure.
Aaron Romeo Moon Burke.
Hello.
And Tim the Enchanter Sheridan.
Hey!
You can follow us at twitter.com/unearthlypod and facebook.com/unearthlypodcast. And you can now support us at patreon.com/unearthlypodcast for your choice of rewards, including getting us to review the Doctor Who story of your choice. We kick off the news this evening with the, all but the last of the Series 8 ratings news, starting, of course, with Death in Heaven's weekly rating.
Yep, and that is 7.6 million watched the UK transmission, according to consolidated figures. That includes those watching the program when it aired and within 1 week of transmission. We'll probably have the final chart position for it in our next podcast.
Yep, so this is not including iPlayer yet.
Correct. The chart placing for
million.
it's 7.6 million, yes.
I'm just thinking, I hadn't checked yet how that compared to the season yet. I'm going to assume
that's
probably
up quite
second.
a bit.
That's definitely on the high end.
Yeah, okay, so it's it's higher than any other single episode, except, of course, for Deep Breath, which, as a Doctor's premiere, was kind of a massive ratings boost.
Yeah, it was also a Doctor premiere, which is even big, but, that's for a series finale.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
We
so
also
actually,
have
it did increase over Dark Water, so there are people that watched Death in Heaven that skipped Dark Water.
I'm not surprised. Again, they hear the word finale and they watch it. We also have the chart placing for Dark Water, which ended as the 15th most watched program on British television, according to figures from Barb. The episode had an official 27.4 share of the total TV audience. Top for that week was Strictly Come Dancing, as usual, which had 10.93. And it once more, and Strictly Come Dancing beat ITV's Downton Abbey, which had 10.77. Doctor Who was the 7th highest rated program on BBC television. And I still think it's the highest drama. In related news, the BBC has released figures on the performance of Series 8 overall.
Yep.
The first season with Peter Capaldi. The series had an average consolidated audience of 7.4 million viewers every week in the UK.
That is kind of skewed, because if you were to take off Deep Breath, Dark Water, and Death in Heaven, the average is something closer to, I'd say, probably 7 million. No, probably a little less than that, honestly.
But this is an average of the series as a whole.
Yeah.
So
I'm just saying it's skewed toward the outer edges.
And, this is still based on the current numbers. They still don't have the final numbers in for the final episode, so this number may actually go up.
Right. Looks like that's an increase of 39% on the initial overnight figures, meaning that about 39% of Doctor Who viewers that watch it within the first week do not watch it on Saturday night.
which is an interesting statistic.
Yeah. So that means that
Um,
about 3 out of 5 have time off on Saturday night and watch it. The rest find some other way to watch it.
There have been over 18.9 million requests to watch Doctor Who Series 8 on BBC iPlayer, an average of 1.6 million requests for each of the 12 episodes. So, Canada had a 22% uplift on consolidated audience since Series 7. The U.S. consolidated figures for the first 10 episodes have seen Series 8 experience a 23% uplift in total audience since Series 7. That Series 8 premiere was the highest rated series premiere ever on BBC America, and is the first BBC Worldwide series ever to simultaneously hold the #1 slot in main TV season charts all across major electronic sell-through platforms in the U.S. within 48 hours of episode's 1 release. Dang. That's some good numbers. We will move on here to a very similar post. The Doctor Who Series 8 UK ratings accumulator. We have mentioned this before, which had the full listing of...
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if we had. Well, yeah, actually, we had mentioned it, but that's basically what we've been following at least the latter half of the season to keep track of updates. And by the way, I had just looked away for a second and I was trying to get the numbers on Doctor Who Extra since the article that you were looking at mentions the iPlayer. It's just eyeballing. It looks like Doctor Who Extra seems to have had about an average of about 50,000 views per episode, with some being a bit more, some being a bit less, at least on YouTube, I mean. So it's still, iPlayer completely dwarfs that.
Yep. Yeah, the accumulator isn't telling us anything that we haven't already shown us.
Yeah, that's
the AI index.
That's just the easiest way to compare them all.
Yep, side by side. All right, so now we're moving on to new information, and that is the Christmas special. And we have seen the Children in Need preview for this. At least I have.
Did I? Well, we did skip some of the other news. Well,
Yeah, you
news
skipped
that was
something
on that list there.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Christmas.
It must have gotten moved on my list. My apologies.
Our next bit of news, we go on to our awards news, which is. It's not an award for Doctor Who, but I figured to put it in there anyway. Bernard Cribbins was awarded the J.M. Barrie Award
for a lifetime of unforgettable work for children on stage, film, television, record. Bernard Cribbins is known in England as the voice of the Wombles, which is a very big children's show. It's had multiple actual series, one back in the 60s and 70s, which is the one that Bernard Cribbins was known for. And then it had a revival in the early 2000s.
He's also known by classic Who fans as Tom Campbell of the Peter Cushing movies from Dalek's Invasion of Earth, or Dalek's Invasion Earth 2150 AD, and to new Who fans as Wilfred Mott, Donna Noble's grandfather.
Correct. That is why we are reporting this.
Yes. Interestingly, the article that we're looking at has a link to BBC to get the news. I went on to BBC and tried searching for various words in this article. I could not find the article at all.
Okay. But it's they seem to have said it, and I don't doubt that he got the J.M. Barrie Award, because that is not a voted on award. That is one that they basically decide to give somebody, and he has done a lot of work for children. He has also did a lot of songs. He's known for such songs as "Right Said Fred." You can find it on YouTube. And he has a couple of other ones. I'm trying to remember them.
So in short, he's had a very long and varied history, and he has been on Doctor Who twice.
Yes, but he has a lot of work with children.
Yeah.
which is very interesting because if you ever meet him in person, he's a little bit irreverent. Let's see. The next piece of news comes
not
from.
well. At this point, we're off of news, but I figured this was a topic worth discussing, even if it's not exactly breaking news. And that's Peter Capaldi recently mentioned in at a special event in London of looks like a Series 8 DVD and Blu-ray launch. He mentioned that he turned down the chance to audition for the Eighth Doctor because he didn't want to have the disappointment of going for something that he would never get. So he was sure he would just never make it.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, Paul McGann was just that good.
And Christopher Eccleston also turned down that same role.
Yep.
So
that
you know,
same audition anyway.
Well, it's either knew that, or he knew that they weren't, or he knew that he wasn't what they were targeting for.
Right. I know. Eccleston had mentioned that it was when he was offered to work with Russell T Davies that he was excited for the program. So here he might have seen what was going on, who the team was, and decided, what, not for me right now.
Probably.
Mm-hmm. Or he looked at what the casting call notes were for.
Right.
Their written description for what they wanted the Doctor to be, and went.
He might have hated that wig even more than Paul.
Well, Paul only had to wear the wig because his head was shaved. Very recently for his work on Alien 3.
But Eccleston,
that wouldn't have applied.
I can't say that. I only know Eccleston from a few roles, so I don't know what his hair is normally like.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually
referring to Capaldi.
Oh, okay.
He might have looked at the casting listing and went, "I'm not what they're looking for with this."
Oh yeah, maybe.
And that may be why he decided not to go for it.
Let's see. That would have been about 20 years ago. So actually, he would have been.
Well, Capaldi also does a lot of really only British and London-esque stuff, doesn't he?
Oh wow. Say that again. Sorry.
Capaldi tends to do a lot of only Britain-only based stuff, though, doesn't he? So I kind of don't see him really leaving there to do Doctor Who. And pretty much the majority of the Doctor Who Eighth Doctor movie was shot in America.
I feel like if he had gotten a phone call from someone saying, "We want you to be the next Doctor," he would have shown up.
Again, it depends.
A lot of the stuff for the Eighth Doctor special was shot in Canada, actually.
Still, it's across the pond either way.
It's out of Britain, so
it's the mid-90s, so it was the Vancouver era, the Hollywood of the North. So
when it comes to film, Vancouver and Toronto, I think, are considered parts of the United States. They're parts of U.S. cities that have just branched out.
I remember the big X-Files thing about moving to Vancouver to shoot. It was, that was kind of why they lost Duchovny for a while. It started in Vancouver, and he wanted to move to L.A. to shoot. Anyway, moving on, as I mentioned...
Yeah, that's it for our general links and topics, and from here we get... did everyone watch the Children in Need special, the preview of the Christmas special?
Yes.
I did.
I missed it. I'm sorry.
I did not watch it either.
Naughty, bad, the both of you. No cookies.
The link there has it if those of you who are not streaming publicly want to watch it.
Yeah, it's about 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
Yeah.
It doesn't really show us anything in particular that we don't really know from seeing, the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically Clara confronts Santa Claus, i.e. Nick Frost, while with his two elves who are basically being dicks.
Yeah.
Make comments, and then the Doctor shows up, has Clara go in the TARDIS, and faces off against Santa in the same way the Doctor would face off against any enemy, which is interesting.
Well, I mean, he goes up to him, and he's like, I know the stakes, so it's almost like Santa is calling on him to go do something, and he's gearing up for whatever fight is
I don't
being
know.
put in front of him.
You read a sense of intensity and dislike coming from
Mhm.
Capaldi. Like, you know,
Well,
So
that's
he
very
has
easy to get from
maybe Santa's a
Capaldi.
Time Lord.
he has his game face going.
Yeah. But I mean, like that. I feel like that's the same. Like he interacts with Santa. I feel the same way he would interact with if Unit were to call him and be like, "We have this mission only you can do, and you damn sure need to do it."
I don't
Or if
know.
someone else did the same thing.
It kind of felt
I
like
don't
he
know.
was talking at
Capaldi.
the master or something to me, actually.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like he's facing off against the master. Capaldi dealing with Unit is more of a casual hostility, and
Hmm.
this is more of an intense hostility. Like, okay, I know the stakes of what's going on, but I think you're behind it, kind of thing. So
Again, we'll have to wait and see.
it's not sure whether Santa Claus at this point is a hero or a villain. Nick Frost is a villain. We'll see, and that it really doesn't tell us much more than what I've described.
I will say though, the costume they put on Nick Frost is excellent. Everything from the actual costume itself down to the little details in the makeup. You can hardly tell it's him.
Until he speaks.
Yeah, there's a couple lines here there where it's like, oh, okay, yeah. Now he's kind of bleeding through it a little bit.
Yep, and as Matt mentioned to us in the channel earlier, that second elf has been revealed as the actor that plays Strax. His name escapes me for the moment.
Mm-hmm. That's actually on the Wikipedia page for the special.
What is his name? He has played other roles in there. Dan Starkey is his name. And he has played various characters in the Doctor Who franchise.
In particular, a
Mostly
lot of
Santarans.
Santarans.
Yes.
I could kind of tell that he was very familiar somehow by the gap in his teeth, and then I look it up and it's Strax. Oh, of course.
Yeah, I listened to his voice too, and yeah, I can hear it. But other than that, this didn't reveal anything real special about the upcoming Christmas special. It didn't even give us a name, did it?
It did not give us a name. No.
So we still don't know what the name of the Christmas special is.
Nope.
At this point, it's about a month away.
I feel like we're going to turn on the BBC on December 25th, and we're just going to get Stephen Moffat going, troll. Here's Nick Frost. Bye.
Oh, if we know that, we know he's done. Not coming back for Series 9. I'm
Pretty
really
much.
hoping this doesn't end out with being a dream sequence kind of thing. Because, yeah, that would piss some people off too.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw, a little surprisingly, but not really that much in retrospect, but a good number of people pissed off even about the dream sequence in Death in Heaven.
Dream sequence?
Yeah, when the doctor hypnotized Clara when she thought the opposite had happened.
That,
With
Oh,
the,
Death
yeah,
in
at the
Heaven.
beginning.
That's
At the
Darkwater.
beginning, that's.
Oh, I'm sorry, not in Death in Heaven, in Dark Water. My apologies.
Yeah, that was what was getting me confused.
Sorry.
Yeah, if he pulls another, dream sequence right away like this, it's going to be bedlam. Last thing you want is a bunch of homicidal Doctor Who fans.
Especially since the majority of the country you live in is Doctor Who fans.
Yep.
Exterminate! Exterminate!
Oh yeah, the Daleks will be out and about looking for Moffat's blood. They'll be at the gates of the BBC every day. Where is Moffat?
Anybody else, anything about the special stood out to them that they want to mention?
Nothing in particular.
I did find it a little, somewhat praiseworthy how they sort of inverted the Santa Claus mythos, where here they're kind of laughing at people for not believing, whereas in so many places it's the other way around. That's not surprising because that's definitely something we would expect Moffat or his team to do, but it's kind of noteworthy. From there, I think Matt had some.
Oh yes.
I think he wanted to give a non-paid product placement.
Bringing up GOG again. Some of the sales are still the same from last week, but I will note that they have added a couple more. Definitely some of their older games. In particular, this week I picked up Ultima Underworld, 1 and 2 for a little over $2.
I remember those games. I owned those games. I played the hell out of those games. I don't remember if I beat those games. Anyway, I also want to note that there was a brief shout out for Doctor Who in Arrow. This tonight's episode, earlier tonight. One of the supporting characters for this season, Ray Palmer, buys a mine, and what he wants from the mine turns out to be dwarf star alloy, which, if you look up, is really only a Doctor Who reference. We know that the head creator of Arrow is a huge Doctor Who fan, based on the open invite he had given to John Barrowman to go and film the 50th anniversary special if he was needed, and the fact that he has cast both Barrowman and what's her name? River Song.
Alex Kingston.
Alex Kingston in roles in the Arrow continuity. So we're always kind of on the lookout for Doctor Who references in that show. Don't know if there's a matching one in The Flash this week. I haven't actually seen it yet.
We shall see.
Anybody else have anything they want to bring up? I think we covered everything we discussed.
Yeah, I think that's everything we mentioned previously.
So let's see. We had a few things we're going to before the interview. I feel like Randy's probably the best person, although anyone else can, to talk about the lost and the found stories.
Oh, the list goes ever on.
For those in the audience who are not yet familiar with this concept yet.
Okay, so way back in the 70s, the BBC, before VHS videotape and home video had become a thing, the BBC decided that it did not want to save all of the tapes of all of the serial episodes it had, or at least all the copies of it. Their plan was to keep one master copy of these in their archives. The problem was that two arms of the BBC each thought the other arm was the one keeping the copy and got rid of their master copies.
Is that confirmed? Because a lot of what I heard was specifically, they did not want reruns because it cost them as much as reshooting the episode. They'd rather just make new stuff whenever they had to air anything and throw away the old stuff.
Well, it didn't cost them the same as reshooting the episode, but they would have to pay the actors and crew.
In terms of paying the actors and everything, it did at the time.
At the time, yeah.
Yeah, I know they wanted to keep a master copy for archival purposes. Because some of the footage was occasionally reused in other programs. For instance, the children's show Blue Peter was really fond of using clips from Doctor Who in its show when they were relevant. In fact, the missing episode of William Hartnell's final serial, The 10th Planet, has been erroneously, or at least partially erroneously, blamed on Blue Peter because people claimed that they checked it out and didn't check it back. Ugh. This, however, seems to be an urban myth.
Oh.
However it happened, many of these serials vanished from the archives as opposed to mislabeling, thinking another department was archiving it. or what have you, and the BBC lost untold amounts of information. I know they lost 90. It was originally close to 100, over 100 episodes of Doctor Who. It was Z-Cars, Quatermass Experiment, a whole bunch of other shows of that era were all lost due to this massive blunder by the BBC. And less than 10 years later, they came to regret it as home video became a thing.
Is someone watching the stream to see if we're getting loads of people angry of that Randy did not pronounce it Zedcars?
I was wondering if people would get mad. I was wondering how people would react to him pronouncing it as archive instead of archive. Archive.
I'm used to Randy's
like
pronunciation varying from ocean to ocean depending on the mood, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure if archive is one of them. I think that's just one of my stutters.
Ah.
No, there's 2 people watching the stream. One of them is me.
Anyway, over the course of the last 30 years, odds and ends of these missing serials have been found, in particular Doctor Who, in various places, ranging from people's attics to a bargain bin in Hong Kong to these latest serials being found somewhere in Africa.
Yes.
The search has been going on. There is currently 97 missing episodes from 26 serials. Some of them are missing all of them. So no footage exists.
Yeah.
Remarkably, the audio for all of these adventures is still intact.
Yeah. Even if it was... I mean, I know at least a lot of it was from fans just saving the audio with their tape recorders, but not even all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the tape recorders were the most common thing because that was actually a thing back then. There wouldn't be an actual video tape recorder for numerous years yet. Probably in a couple decades.
So this
And
search for the search for the missing episodes, is that an official thing by the BBC? Like, do they have a department that's just dedicated to just that?
Pretty much.
It's not just for Doctor Who, but it is the BBC archives. It does have a ongoing search for all their missing material, and Doctor Who in particular. I believe Blue Peter has at one point, I don't know if it's still running, that if you find a lost Doctor Who serial, they will give you a full-size Dalek.
Nice. That's of course also in addition to there are third-party businesses that specifically go out looking for these things to sell them to the BBC. At least I'm assuming they're selling them. I can't imagine they put all that effort into it and then donate it. Because some of them are in some pretty far-out places.
Either way, there has been a massive search going on for probably at least the last 20 years, and a passive search for the last 30. I could tell you, we thought by the mid to late 90s that we had pretty much found everything there was to be found, that we weren't going to find anything more. One of the biggest finds was the Tomb in Space, or the what is it? Tomb of the Cybermen.
Tomb of the Cybermen, yes.
Yep. The second Doctor serial was found in its entirety, in a bin in Hong Kong, basically like in a second-hand store, for about the equivalent of, I would say, £5.
Jesus. $10?
Yeah. More like $750, Matt. That was cheap at twice the price. And then, of course, the biggest find was last year where they found all of the one that we're reviewing, I believe is one of the final serials he did, which is missing all but episode 2. Because of this, of course, it makes the watching the first and second Doctor a very spotty attempt.
And also quite annoying at times.
They're already a very different pace than what most modern viewers are are used to. Add that to the fact that half of them exist in telesnaps or fan photos only, and it does take some work to get through them all.
Not just fan photos; there are production photos as well.
There are, but I think it's a mixture, or some of them are a mixture of both. Not all. Some of them have a lot of official material. Some of them had to rely on whatever was sent in.
I believe the recorded version of Marco Polo uses a lot of production photos. As many of those were
that was also kind of re-put together by a third party essentially, and Turnerized.
Actually, not so much Turnerized. Actually, a lot of the production photos were in color at the time.
It was a lot easier back then to take color photographs than it was to do color video.
Well, they Turnerized the opening sequence at the very least.
But regardless, yeah, you basically can watch the majority of the first season without missing that much. But once you start getting into the second season,
I thought the majority of the second season was stable too.
No, I'm sorry. You're right. Sorry, the first and second season are more or less okay.
Whereas the third, fourth, and fifth seasons are pretty much butchered.
Yeah, horribly. So you basically get up to the point that Ian and Barbara, I think, are ready to leave, and then
that's near the end of season 2.
Yeah, and then it starts breaking into broken bits. You get episodes here and there that are intact. Only episode 23 of the third season and 25 are intact, which are the Ark and the War Machines.
I know Dalek's Master Plan is 12 episodes, and I think maybe 2.5 or 3.5 of them are intact.
3 of them are intact. According to their official list, they're missing 9 of the 12 episodes. If they've got a half episode, they're not including it in their list.
I think the one that aired on Christmas Day is partially available. I don't think the whole thing is there. The one with the and Merry Christmas to all of you at home or whatever.
Maybe it might just be that they have only that piece.
Right. That's like the 10th Planet. All of it was missing except for the regeneration scene, which I think Blue Peter had managed to save.
The entire 4th season is not intact. None of it.
No intact serials.
So everything is missing at least 1 episode from the 4th season. Then the first episode of the 2nd season is intact, which was found.
You mean the 5th season or?
Yeah, the 5th season. Sorry. Yeah, the
Trout
first
second season.
Yes, Trout and 2nd season is intact, and that was Tomb of the Cybermen, which I mentioned was found in '92. And then, again, there's nothing until...
that's the season, by the way, that the, 11 or 10 episodes that were recently found, including the ones we're discussing this week and next week, were part of. That's this season here.
And this is, I believe, episode 40 that we're reviewing today. And 41 is The Web of Fear, which was mostly found. Fury from the Deep and The Wheel in Space are still not intact. Fury from the Deep is missing entirely. And The Wheel in Space is missing 3 and 6.
Although season 4 is getting animated bit by bit, so might see more.
and then Series 6, you're missing pieces from the Invasion, which has been animated, and the Space Pirates, but the rest of that series is intact. So basically, if you were watching in the 80s, you would go from the end of Ian and Barbara, and then it would cut forward to the Ark, and then it would cut forward, it would skip an episode, and you would do the War Machines, and then it would cut all the way to season 6 with the Dominators. And you're like, the hell?
Because that's what should be your first Patrick Troughton story. And I mean, I haven't seen that one. I know it by reputation, but its reputation is not good.
I didn't mind it that much, but I haven't seen it in years. So
if I remember what I read properly, it is the story where Patrick Troughton visually quits Doctor Who.
I haven't seen it in years, so I don't know. I didn't mind it when I watched it, but I did spend most of the episode confused as what the hell happened to the white-haired guy that was the Doctor.
Gotcha. So yeah, you had watched him on television, which brings us on to our next topic, where we might as well at least take a look at what our history or lack thereof with the Second Doctor is. I'm pretty sure we all had at least some passing familiarity with him before going into today's story. How about we start with Tim going in our normal end of the night order?
All right. I'm sorry.
Tim is still on the left side of my screen, so yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I spaced for a bit. What are we doing?
What is
your
experience with the
history with the Second Doctor? How much you knew about him, what you had seen about him, any interesting bits you wanted to say.
Well, I took one of those online quizzes, which Doctor are you, and I got the Second Doctor. The first serial I saw with the Second Doctor was a DVD I bought. I have The Mind Robber. That was enough to sell me on wanting to see more of the Second Doctor. I've also seen The Three Doctors, where he played off of John Pertwee. Thought that was a very funny. And this, The Enemy of the World, is the third time I've seen the Doctor. I am familiar with Patrick Troughton from the movie The Omen.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, yeah, he was in The Omen. I'm more familiar with him from, not Clash of the Titans, Jason and the Argonauts.
Was he in Jason and the Argonauts?
He was a blind man who was being tortured by Zeus by not being able to eat, and he had two harpies after him that took away his food.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I did not realize that.
At the end of that part of the story, Jason captured the harpies, and Patrick Troughton was feeding them his scraps.
I see. Yeah. For the part, I think Patrick Troughton is one of my favorite of the classic Doctors. He seems
the classic Doctors, yeah, he's in a lot more stuff I've seen.
What?
The classic Doctors, he's definitely in a lot more stuff that I've seen outside of Doctor Who.
So that's a bit my experience with Patrick Troughton and the Second Doctor so far. I look forward to seeing more of his stuff in the future, which is where we'll all be one day.
Future events such as these will happen
in the future. If you plan night from outer space.
Aaron?
All right, I'm done.
Yeah, my I remember him from the Five Doctors. I really kind of liked him in there. He was actually one of my favorite parts of the Five Doctors. So I remember him not liking how they redid The Office. Yeah. And, let me see here. What else? Oh, I've seen him in Seeds of Death. That's one of the only Doctor Who VHS tapes my public library had in Manitowoc. When we lived there. That's one of the Ice Warriors serials.
Yeah, actually, I think that's the first Ice Warriors episode.
That's the one where they're invading through the moon, I believe. I know there's it involves a transmat on the moon, and that's how they get down through into Earth or something like that. So, yeah, it was interesting. I liked it. Unfortunately, I just haven't been able to find anything else from him. So, yeah, but I've liked what I've seen.
Okay, Matt.
As I previously mentioned, my first real glimpse at Patrick Troughton was probably when I was about 10 years old and saw Jason and Argonauts. My first experience with him as the actual Doctor, though, I'm trying to think. It must have been during when I was trying to go through the Cyberman serials when I was first trying to watch Classic Who. I believe after a little while, I think it was towards the very tail end of the first Doctor that I started realizing there are certain ones that I really needed to see, and started focusing on those a bit more often. To which, especially when it went all patchwork with the second Doctor, I decided, okay, there's obviously a lot of stuff missing. I only have patience for so much, so let's focus on Daleks and Cybermen. Tons of Cybermen. So I sat through all of his Cyberman stuff, and it was usually pretty good as far as audios go. And that's pretty much my experience of him originally. Since then, of course, I've seen him in the Five Doctors, the Three Doctors, etc.
Right. I keep telling myself to take some time out to watch all of Troughton's Dalek and Cyberman stories, and he has a fair number of them, and I never get around to finishing them all.
As far as I'm concerned, they're all great classic episodes.
Right, yeah. From what I hear, not all of the Cybermen ones are up to that caliber, but a lot of them.
The weakest one was the moon-based one, but that was still survivable.
Mm-hmm. My first experience with him as a second Doctor, I made it a point that the first Classic Who episodes I went out of my way to watch were the Three Doctors and the Five Doctors, because I felt that it would cause me to experience as much of Classic Who as possible in as short a time as possible. It did not work very well because there's too much in the Five Doctors to watch it as a newbie and have any clue what's going on. The Three Doctors, on the other hand, was much more newbie-friendly. After that, I went on to, obviously with this podcast, we watched Power of the Daleks, and the War Game, the War Games, both of which I had watched on my own in the past. The Mind Robber we also watched, and we did a few other things for the podcast. I think the first second Doctor serial that I watched separately was probably Tomb of the Cybermen when it aired as part of the 50th anniversary celebration. Mm. And that's about it. Ron?
Well, I have seen most of the existing second Doctor serials at this point. I am missing a couple. I saw most of the ones that were originally out in the 80s. For some reason, I've never seen the Crotons, which apparently exist. I always just manage to miss it.
I had a salad the other day with Crotons.
That's Crotons.
I likewise have never seen The Invasion, even though Matt has brought it to GeekCon a couple of times. I always wind up either at the desk or elsewhere whenever it airs.
Should I just bring it along this year and we watch it in a DVD player in the room or something the night
Bring
before
it bring it
con?
to OddCon. Bring it to OddCon, and we'll watch it like here, coming home from OddCon when we can't sleep at some point. Anyway, I have also read more of the Second Doctor novelizations. For the episodes I haven't seen, including the Moon Base, Power of the Daleks, Evil of the Daleks, the Ice Warriors, etc. So I get some of his characterization through that. And of course, I've seen the 5 Doctors, the 3 Doctors, and as the 2 Doctors, and many interviews that he did over the course of the years. So I'm fairly well knowledgeable about the Second Doctor. Unlike Matt, though, I have not really seen him outside that role.
Oh, there's so many
I've
good
seen
things he's
I've
done.
seen him in The Omen, and I haven't watched Jason and the Argonauts in years. I couldn't even tell you what year the last time I watched it was. So.
Dude, it's Ray Harryhausen. It's worth watching.
This is very true, and if I were to be walking somewhere and see it, I would absolutely watch it that night. And I could probably find it online. I just haven't.
I know
Going out of my
A&E
way
likes
to.
to play Ray Harryhausen stuff now and again, so keep an eye on them if nothing else.
Mhm.
You'll find it
Doctor
eventually.
Who was the first time I was aware of who Patrick Troughton was. That this
Yeah.
man's name is Patrick Troughton. Then I went back to the Omens. Oh wow, that was him too.
Mm-hmm.
And other things like that.
Yeah, I didn't really know him by name until after Doctor Who. I just knew that there was this old guy, and he occasionally appeared in things, and he had dark hair, and he sounded very British.
Before we go into the summary and such, I do have one other thing I want to mention. This episode is written by the script editor of Season 1 and directed by the producer of the entire Third Doctor era. So that on its own makes this episode kind of special, regardless of the fact that it's probably the best acted second Doctor episode I've ever seen, but that's more part of the later discussion.
Yep.
So some interesting elements going into the creation of this even before we get to the actual story. And after that, I think we're about ready for the summary, unless anyone has anything to bring up before that.
Anybody?
Not really.
Okay, so summary. I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible. This is a 6-episode serial, so it does run basically the equivalent of 3 of our Doctor Who episodes today in length. Let's see if I can try to boil this down as fast as I can. All right, the TARDIS arrives on a beach. And the Doctor is pleased to see a beach. He runs out, strips down to his long johns, and decides to go for a dip. And while he's doing this, he's being spied on by 3 people in a hovercraft who seem to recognize him and don't like him. They call their boss, who asks them to wait while she contacts her boss, but they decide that no, they're going to kill him. The Doctor comes out of the sea, sees the hovercraft approaching, and the heroic trio run from the hovercraft trio. A long series of running and conversing on why this is going on happens until eventually Jamie gets up the gumption to punch out one of the guys. They're then rescued by the lady with a helicopter, and they try to fly off to safety, though the helicopter itself is shot in a fuel tank, and she says that it may explode at any moment. She goes back to her house, and the Doctor tends to her wound because she had been shot in the arm. And she explains to them that these men has mistaken him for Salamander, a man trying to take over the world as a dictator. She wants the Doctor to go see her boss, Giles Kent, and the Doctor's a little dubious about this and says no. However, the 3 armed men once again close in on the location, and a melee ensues in which one of the guys is accidentally shot by the other two men, and the heroes and the lady all flee the building, at which point the surviving two guys try to take off in the helicopter to chase them down, which promptly explodes. We assume then that she takes their hovercraft and goes to the office of Giles Kent, who can't believe the resemblance between the Doctor and Salamander, and manages to show the Doctor some footage of Salamander's speech. The Doctor, however, says, how does he know that Salamander's a bad guy? And after some conversation, the man reveals that the head of security for the world, a man by the name of Donald Bruce, is on his way there. The Doctor, having no choice, is ushered into the back room to do an impromptu impersonation of Salamander. He manages to pull it off, and Bruce is convinced that Salamander is there and is ordered away. And they hatch a quick plan to try to prove some of Salamander's guilt. Jamie and Victoria are flown to the Central European Zone to pose as friends to try to gain Salamander's confidence and learn some of his more wicked side. Meanwhile, Bruce returns to the research center, Salamander's headquarters, and talks to the security chief of the research headquarters, trying to figure out why Salamander's in Australia when he's supposed to be in the Central European Zone. However, he accepts the security chief's belief that he will deal with Kent, Giles Kent, and goes on his business. Meanwhile, in the Central European Zone, we meet Salamander, who is talking with Dennis and another man. Basically, it comes down to Salamander's predicting that there's going to be a huge disaster in that zone, and that he needs to ready the guys. Dennis, however, says that he needs to talk to his advisors. And when he's gone, Salamander then talks to the third guy. Anybody remember his name? Fedoran. Who?
Veteran, yeah.
Yeah, Fedoran. Sorry. I'm looking at names and trying to remember
Yeah,
pronunciations.
you pronounced the spelling right, but not accented the same way.
Yeah. Anyway, Fedoran, who Salamander has dirt on. So he's able to basically blackmail him into a plot to try to assassinate Dennis. During this time, Jamie has since, quote, foiled, unquote, a plot to kill Salamander, and has essentially managed to get jobs for himself and Victoria, him as a member of Salamander's personal guard, and Victoria as assistant to Salamander's chef, a rather grumbly, pissed-off man. Kind of a 60s Gordon Ramsay, if you would. Anyway, the disaster occurs as Salamander predicted, and Salamander immediately has Dennis arrested for incompetence. Dennis
Is that an arrestable offense now?
However, he is taken into custody and is looking forward to facing Salamander in trial. However, Salamander takes this excuse to try to get Fedoran to kill him, which does not happen, as Fedoran does not have the heart to kill the man. However, during the process, Jamie, Victoria, and Astrid take this time to try to get Dennis to escape, during which time he is shot in the back. Meanwhile, I am trying to summarize here. Salamander has returned to the research center, um, and Astrid has returned to the Australian zone as well. Bennick, the head of security for the research center, is on the lookout for Astrid because he knows that she'll lead them to Kent and that she was implied as being part of this big escape plot in the Central European zone. However, as Astrid meets Salamander's food taster, Faria, who claims to have information that will expose Salamander as a liar and a cheat. Basically, the same information that Salamander was using to blackmail Federer. This information is given to Kent and the Doctor, who look it over, but it's not enough to prove that Salamander's evil. However, since Jamie and Victoria were taken prisoner during this escape attempt, the Doctor is hoping that he can free them by doing a Salamander impersonation. Bennick and his men have traced Kent to his office. However, in the chaos, all three of them escape, but Faria is shot down, and the blackmail files are recovered by Bennick. This situation begins to disturb Bruce, and he begins to look into stuff. Into the truth behind things, wanting to talk to people. Back at the research center, Salamander locks himself into his records room, his private records room. And once he's in there, he opens up a panel in the wall, which reveals an elevator, which takes him down into a vast underground complex, which he has changed into a dusty, tattered jumpsuit, because the people down there all believe that they've survived a nuclear war and have been living down there for 5 years. They believe that they are the ones creating these natural disasters, and are thinking that they are doing it to help recreate the surface and the enemies that started the war. But Salamander has told them they cannot return to the surface until the radiation levels are back to safe levels. Basically, they're playing Fallout with Salamander as the chosen one. However, it's obvious that Salamander is keeping the truth from these guys, and these guys from the rest of the world. So the Doctor decides to go in, posing as Salamander. But before they can do so, they are cornered by Bruce, who questions the Doctor on why he's doing this. The Doctor refuses to try to... Astrid grabs Bruce's gun, or Bruce's guard's gun, disarms him, but the Doctor refuses to shoot anybody, hands the gun back to Bruce as a sign of good faith, which gives Bruce enough reason to let the Doctor make his attempt into the station, using Kent and Astrid as essentially hostages. Back underground, Salamander has gifted them with supplies he has found in the surface, but one of the scientists finds a scrap of newspaper bearing a year-old headline talking about holiday liner sinks, which makes him think, why would there be a holiday liner following this horrible nuclear war that they're hiding from? He confronts Salamander, who claims that, yes, the war is over, but all the survivors are horribly disfigured and mentally unstable, and all deserve to die. Swan doesn't fully buy it, but seeks proof, and Salamander agrees to take him to the surface, which annoys one of the other members who is getting essentially claustrophobic and wants to see the surface badly. Meanwhile, Jamie and Victoria have woken up from being drugged during their capture. And and are interrogated by Bennick. However, Salamander enters with Bruce and orders him out. When Victoria and Jamie start confronting Salamander with his crimes, particularly the murders that they have seen, Salamander is revealed to be the Doctor in disguise who has come to rescue them. This is still not enough to convince Bruce, but enough doubt is planted that he agrees to do a more active investigation. Meanwhile, Astrid and Kent have broken free of their guards and snuck onto the base to take matters into their own hands because they don't think the Doctor can finish the job. They find a cave entrance, or they find an area near the cave entrance where Swan apparently has been horribly assaulted and left for dead by Salamander. Swan tells Astrid of all the people hidden underground and begs her to help free them before dying. Astrid reaches them and convinces them that they've been fooled by Salamander for all these years and that Swan is dead. Eventually, her and Colin, the claustrophobic one, and Mary all take the lift to the journey to the surface. They reach the records room where they meet the Doctor and Kent, who Kent seems to know entirely too much about what's going on here, and it's discovered that he actually basically only wants to kill Salamander to take his place, which the Doctor had suspected for some time, which is why he had been so slow to act. Bruce then tries to assert authority, takes over the research center, arresting Bennick. The Doctor manages to get Bruce on the radio link and tells him what's going on. And then he goes down to search for Kent and Salamander, who have all managed to escape down into the tunnels between the research center and the shelter, essentially. Kent and Salamander eventually bump into each other and fight. Kent is wounded fatally, but before he dies, he manages to get to a set of hidden explosives and tries to blow up the caves. Astrid discovers the scientists are still alive and manages to rescue them, but the fate of the Doctor and Salamander are unknown. A little while later, Jamie and Victoria are waiting near the TARDIS when the Doctor finally arrives, though his behavior seems to be puzzling. He doesn't speak, and with emotions Jamie to pilot the TARDIS for him, something which they've never been allowed to do. Then the real Doctor arrives, making fun of Salamander's impersonation of him. They argue a bit. Salamander grabs the controls, but dematerializes the ship while the doors are still open. He's sucked out into the time-space vortex, and we cut away as the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria hang on for life. Ugh. Okay.
Only a British or European production would have Australia and Asia into a combined political body equal to Central Europe.
The Australasia zone?
The Australasian zone is as the same type of body as the Central European zone. So what exactly qualifies as Central Europe? Maybe 5 or 6 countries, 10 at the most, 20 somehow, if they're really tiny.
I'm actually wondering if these zones were taken by taking like direct north to south slices out of the Earth, and then just naming them after the largest bodies in them. So Central European zone would also include parts of Africa. And thus there would probably be like Western, Central, and Eastern American zone too, which would include Canada, U.S., Mexico, and South America, all in big slices.
Even then, I mean, unless the Australasian zone name is misleading, I mean, you could cut that into 3 slices the same way.
Yeah, that was a little much.
It's like, are you going to count Russia and Australia as part of the same slice? Because if so,
That's kind of strange.
Yeah.
And how do they?
Especially considering that Asia now is probably the most populous country on the planet, or
Yeah. It has
populous
it has the
planet.
two most populated countries, I believe, if not more.
So you really couldn't say that they were dividing it by population either.
Right. Although I can imagine they would consider India separate from Asia, as is often done.
Mm-hmm. By Asia, they probably mean East Asia,
Yeah.
as opposed to
Which
fact
still,
that
if you're
Asia-
going from China on east, that's still a huge
Oh yeah,
area.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying it would be at least more plausible than saying
Yeah,
that
yeah.
this zone encompasses everything from Turkey east.
Yeah. That would be a little much. That would pretty much be a hemisphere, if not a hemisphere, close to it. Oh no, well, Greenwich Mean Line, yeah. You're still not that far. You're what, 6 time zones east of that? No, more than that, but still.
Yeah, most people when they divide this up, and this is probably the way it would be divided up today,
Mm-hmm.
is that the zone that they would have been in would have been Oceania,
Right.
which would have included Australia, New Zealand.
I'm going to guess that the Philippine zone would be the next one over.
I don't know if the Philippines is in Oceania or not. I'm trying to remember what's the chain of islands that's north of Australia, south of Asia proper. I don't know. I'm suddenly my geography has gone all nuts on me.
I know what you're talking about, but geography was never my best subject anyway.
It's actually one of mine. My brain is just going. My brain is just having a massive mind fart. I'm glad this never happened when I was taking tests.
I think it's interesting that this.
Is it Indonesia?
Yeah, Indonesia. That's what I'm thinking of.
At the time that this was filmed, this takes place in the future, but now it's the present.
Yeah, I noticed that while I was watching it. I think the only date that we're given is that it's sometime before 2018 if that helicopter's license is up to date. But
Yeah.
even then, I mean, that means that at the most we're given 3 years for the Earth to be divided up into zones and us to start flying rockets from country to country.
We're nearly there. I mean, this was, before like the Concorde or any of the supersonic jets.
Yeah.
And we only have a little more than a month until we're supposed to have hoverboards and flying cars.
Yeah.
Then again, I think we're supposed to have a glass elevator to the moon at this point. Or is that 2050?
Well, I do know that the hoverboards are actually happening.
And technically the citizens of Japan are supposed to be having a massive series of battles right now against apparently the giant monsters, which are supposed to be the emissaries of God.
And don't they need to, make 17 sequels to Jaws?
Close. We have 4 down. Or 3 down, actually.
Depends. Do you count the unofficial sequels?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Gotta remember them Italian movies. They call themselves Jaws, too.
Matt,
Yep.
5 years from now, we turn around, we go to look up Sharknado on IMDb. What do you mean Jaws 13 Sharknado?
Oh, God.
Because you know they would.
Another thing I noticed that these earthquakes that Salamander causes are the most accurate earthquakes ever because the people who are watching the earthquakes seem to be unaffected from them, and yet they're happening in clear view of from where they are. Like they're not using any binoculars or telescopes or anything.
Actually, they are.
That's main character immunity. That's nothing special about the earthquake. It's the radiant shield that follows people like Salamander and Giles Kent everywhere they go.
But
Blame the
still,
DM.
you have to feel sorry for Salamander, because with a name like Salamander, did he have any career options other than World Conqueror?
He could have been a wrestler.
This,
He
oh,
could have.
Okay, yeah, I concede that.
The name like Salamander, he might have sold insurance.
Uh-huh.
I've saved a bunch of money on my insurance by switching to Salamander.
I do find it a little surprised that nobody brings up his name. Like, I'm expecting him to be like breathing fire and all kinds of shit, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that's just a name that he has." He has no first and last name either. He just has a name, which,
Yeah.
considering this is set on essentially modern day Earth, and everybody else has two names, is a little odd.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Sarek, where you're from another planet with different naming conventions.
There was
Or,
Faria. There was Faria. She only had one name.
That's true, but she was at least relatively lower class to the point where you can assume that everyone was just calling her by her first name and no one bothered to learn her last name.
I'm still largely thrilled that the head of security for the Australasian zone was named Bruce.
Well,
Bruce.
he's the head
Hi,
of security.
Bruce.
He's the head of security for
Oh,
essentially
Bruce.
the UN. He's
So, you're the head of
Security
security
chief of the
around
world.
here. What's your name?
I'm
Roberts?
Bruce.
Sorry, that'll cause a bit of confusion. Mind if we call you Bruce just to keep things normal? That way you can work with Bruce, and Bruce.
And by the way, Bruce over there works in the sheep pens.
So, I don't think we should try to go through this scene by scene, because if we do, we'll be here all night.
Oh yeah, pretty much.
So, let's kind of do a good, the bad, and the ugly on this. All right? Does that work for you, Bill?
That works. I mean, we could also do subplot by subplot, but we could kind of play that part by ear depending on how much we want to talk about and how much time we have.
Yeah.
All right, so a good, bad, and the ugly. Tim, name something you liked in this episode.
I liked Patrick Troughton's performance, the way he could switch from the Doctor to Salamander.
He could also switch to the Doctor playing Salamander and Salamander playing the Doctor.
Yeah,
Four distinct roles
Mhm.
there.
Yep. Although, anybody notice that Salamander, I swear that Troughton was channeling Ricardo Montalban?
Yes.
A tiny bit, yeah.
At one
Oh
point,
God!
he-
I'm just picturing Salamander Returns, the wrath of Salamander.
I mentioned that to Aaron while we were watching this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm picturing him sitting in a TARDIS. He tasks me.
No, you see, you gotta match it. You gotta imagine Patrick Troughton, gray-haired Patrick Troughton, sitting in a TARDIS, wearing basically a torn, bare-chested shirt with many pecs and a broken seal of Rassilon around his neck.
Yeah.
At hell's heart I stab at thee.
No, Doctor, you can't escape. It's basically the Master, only with a Latin accent. But no, there was a part too where he says to somebody, "Yes, welcome," and my brain goes to Fantasy Island. Look, boss, the rocket. If
The
Salamander
chopper!
If Salamander had ever worn a completely white suit in there, I think my brain would have absolutely blown a gasket.
We completely hijacked Tim's point, but to be fair, I think it would have been all of our picks.
Yeah, pretty much. The acting in this was absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
All things considered.
Speaking of the acting, I don't think Victoria had to scream.
No,
At least
I was
not
looking
more than
for
once.
it,
She had only a few minor sequences where she had to scream.
and they weren't that loud a scream.
No. Not by any means.
She didn't defeat the enemy by screaming like she does in certain stories.
Nope. Okay, Aaron, do you have something you particularly liked?
Let me see here. I did like the twist at the end, actually. That was one I should have probably seen it coming a mile away, but I did not see Kent, working along with
yeah.
Salamander. It was just like,
I
wait a
really,
second, that was actually kind of surprising. I should have seen that coming from a mile away.
I really like
Yeah.
that because it's kind of played to the point where the audience assumes Kent is right and doesn't really have a chance to think otherwise. But the doctor suspects Kent of being something other than he says the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's whereas the audience is so distracted with Salamander, the doctor is just playing this chess game on every level.
Okay. Matt,
The original
what do you
chess
have
master.
that you really liked?
What's her name? The one actress in particular, the one that was with Kent mostly.
Astrid?
Astrid, yes. I thought as far as some of these side characters go, she really kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, she was developed pretty nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Although one thing I would have liked to have seen about her was why she in particular was working for Kent.
Yeah, they don't really explain that.
She clearly hadn't been working for Kent back when Kent was working with Salamander.
No.
Apparently.
She
So
seems to have started not long before the lackeys that end up dead. Which is why she's in a higher position than them.
All right. Bill, what did you like?
I think I'm going to go with Jamie. In this, he's the senior companion, the one who can give even though he's not as smart as the doctor, he can give explanations when the doctor's not there. He can go along, be the spy. I do like how he changed Victoria from his friend to his girlfriend when he needed to work it into his own story.
Well, we always figured Jamie was a little sweet on Victoria.
Yeah,
A little bit, yeah.
but here he really, he's not as experienced as he would be with Zoe, but even still here, he's the companion who's been around the block a few times. He can explain things to Victoria for the audience. It's really proof that you don't need a, teen girl from the 20th century in order to give someone some plot exposition. You can just have, someone like Jamie and someone like Victoria.
How about that mean squeeze they had in the helicopter together?
Well, yeah, that was that too, wasn't there?
Mm-hmm.
When I saw this story, my first thought was, did Jamie just do a dragon punch? I know he didn't yell so
and yeah,
but
More or less, he did a Scottish dragon punch, yes.
yeah. It was the right cross of doom. So,
That's awesome.
I'm going to, since you've all listed most of the things I liked about this, I'm going to list something I liked to hate. And that was Bennick.
Ah, yes, Bennick. The smarmy...
Oh, the wormy guy, yeah!
He's the one,
Yes.
he's not
That
even...
wormy
you can't even
bastard.
say he has noble intentions. He's just the downright dastardly motherfucker.
He's a downright dastardly motherfucker who enjoys his every waking moment being a wormy bastard for the main bad guy.
Like, you really get the impression that at 5 years old, his hobby was picking the wings off of butterflies.
Yeah. This is, Bennick was played by Milton Johns, who is not, this was his first appearance in Doctor Who, but certainly not his last.
Oh.
And his most memorable version, at least to me, is in the Doctor Who serial "The Invasion of Time" with Tom Baker, where he plays Castellan Kellner.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, Kellner is the one that, when the aliens invade, basically immediately becomes their toady. And so I'm sitting through a good chunk of this episode going, God, I know this guy.
I thought he looked somewhat familiar to me too, but I couldn't ever place it. I didn't have the
Well, yeah,
confused ire to go up and look for him.
Aaron and I started talking to each other, trying to figure out where we had seen this guy. And first we thought he had been in, like, Willy Wonka.
Yeah, I
And
thought
then-
that he had... Yeah.
And then he made a certain movement with his head. And my brain immediately said, that looks about right, but there should be a helmet on. Oh my God, he played a Time Lord.
And the thing with him, like, he's such a caricature to the point where if he was the main villain, it would be too over the top. But since he's just a supporting write-in character, he's absolutely perfect.
Perfect as the
he's
evil
a-
little
he-
toady,
he-
yes.
He is a perfect archetype toady. I mean, if
He's
you
the
know-
character. If it was a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, he'd be the character showing up at the end of every session just to egg the players on.
Yes.
if this was Lord of the Rings, he'd be Wormtongue.
Yeah.
If this was Harry Potter, he'd be Wormtail. He's the perfect toady character.
Yeah.
And he's absolutely beautiful at it.
Yes.
I think the thing is that he kind of has the physical features to play for that.
Yes, but he
A
not
little
only
bit.
has the physical features, he has the talent for it.
Yes. Yeah, if he didn't have the
And
talent
the-
for it, it wouldn't come off as good as it does, but the physical
combination
features
of the
help.
two. The
He
combination
would have made a
of the
very
two-
good Bib Fortuna.
Yes, he would have. Okay, so we've all mentioned something we liked.
Yep.
Now we're going to go to the bad. What did you not like in this episode? We'll start with you, Tim.
For what I did not like, I did not like how little we saw the Doctor himself in this episode, or like how it seems that the Doctor's main role was to be talking with Kent, and then we cut back to Salamander plotting, and then occasionally we throw in a scene with Jamie and Victoria.
Yeah,
Fair.
he was
And
kind of
that was mainly a lot of this writer particularly likes to stall and build up your anticipation for the main scene of the episode, which in this case was the scene in the TARDIS at the end, Salamander versus the Doctor, and the whole point was to get the audience reared up and chanting for that scene before it was even close to happening.
Which also, by the way, what a twist of a moment. Because I did not expect them to pull off a split screen. I didn't expect them to pull off a split screen as well as they did either.
Yeah, considering the fact that this was 1967, I think, or 68.
Yeah, there's no
And-
blue
yeah.
screen, no green screen. How the hell did they do such a clean split screen?
Granted, Star Trek had done it, but Star Trek had a bigger budget.
Yes.
Also, considering that I thought if that was the case, then building up to this, it seemed to take too long, and that's just from me watching the whole thing in one sitting. I can't imagine what it was like back when it first aired, and you had to wait a week between each episodes.
Oh god, that must have been murder.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that today. What it must have been like to watch these serial style. Although I was actually thinking about what it would have been like, during the Tom Baker era, but the same thing applies.
Yeah, except that it's even more pronounced of a difference in the black and white era because the pacing was completely different than it would be later on anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, or even, earlier when every serial had a specific episode name and it was basically just one continuous story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did they do episode recaps at the beginning of these shows?
No.
That's what I was wondering.
That's if you notice, they tend to repeat the cliffhanger.
They'll repeat like the last half minute or so, maybe. At the beginning of the episode, but that'd be
sometimes
it.
it seems to be 2 or 3 minutes, but yeah.
Yeah, it depends on how pivotal it is.
And later on, they'd only do that within storylines. So, you'd get one serial, they'd do it within the serial, but there'd be a clean break from one serial to the next.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, the middle of it in particular was a bit Dr. Light, because all the focus was on Jamie and Victoria.
It wasn't Dr. Actor Light, just Dr. Specific Light.
Yes.
Correct. All right, Aaron, what was something you didn't like?
I didn't like... I guess this goes with her character, but I kind of didn't like how little Victoria was used. I felt like, yeah, she's a screamer and everything, or she's your typical, damsel in distress, but she could have been used for a little bit more. And Jamie, I kind of miss seeing both of them. I'm kind of used to seeing them a little bit more in these serials, but I guess maybe it's just because
I think it's because the cast was so crowded. Like, I look at, like, I can pick up specific things that Jamie was for, that Victoria was for, but yeah, but considering the fact that you have 3 TARDIS travelers, you have 4 other main characters, you have at least 4 supporting characters, and it just goes on from there.
Mm-hmm.
Very character-dense serial, and some of the characters suffer for it.
I mean, for me, it kind of kept it going, introducing all these different personalities, but it also kept them from being fleshed out any further, so...
That personality.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Matt?
I will
Something
say
you
that
didn't
Tim
like.
stole my thunder on it felt too long-winded. Something else I didn't really like about this serial.
Sorry.
Don't give him hints. This has to come from Matt.
I think what would have helped it and would have padded it better would be if they had some more action pieces or something. Because they did have a few of them here and there, especially the first episode, but then they just got into too many long conversations, and you start to lose your thunder.
It just became plot heavy?
Yeah, it became too plot heavy, and they should have had something in the middle, like around episode 3 or 4, to spice things up again for a little bit.
And they kind of kept, like, the Jamie portion of the subplot tended to have its own few action scenes, just no real, no
they weren't really
strong
big
ones.
though,
They were
and they weren't really strong.
like
No,
5-second ones, yeah.
Yeah, there's little tiny things, and it's just like.
And things that could have been more actiony were directed so that the action was cut out. Yeah, I noticed that about, like, the escape scene.
Yeah, also, yeah. Are we sure that wasn't some missing footage or something? Because that was a little sudden. The whole escape sequence.
I think it was probably cut for time. Because that episode was still 25 minutes, so.
Shouldn't do that.
Yep. So, Bill, what don't you like?
I would say the thing that tweaked me the most about it is that I feel like the Doctor's ability to impersonate Salamander was wasted. I mean, it's used essentially for one scene with Giles Kent and one scene with proving he can do it. I feel like another scene or two amping up the tension by him actually, like, being undercover without help immediately there would have brought up the tension a bit more.
Probably, and again, that might have been stuff that got edited out for time. Yeah, it was all. They kept talking about his ability to do this throughout the entire thing, and then it just seemed to come off as, kind of a 1-2 point gag. All right. So, what I did not like about this episode was how it was written. The plot does not make a lot of sense when you really take yourself aside and look at it. Salamander's plot to take over the world is so overly needlessly complicated.
Yep.
Horrifically so. I mean, Why did he trap a whole bunch of people down there when obviously the technology existed to automate the process? Because, pretty much everything that gave Salamander away was the fact that he had these 30-some people squirreled away down there.
Mm-hmm. Now, from what I understand, this episode was largely played up to be Doctor Who visits a James Bond movie. Would you say this is more or less or the same amount of believability as the average Bond villain?
I would say less. It actually came off more as a plot you would hear from an old 1930s serial. Like a old Flash Gordon.
I would argue that it depends upon what part of James Bond we're talking about, because James Bond at parts could get pretty
James
squirrely.
Bond in the 60s.
Yeah, not Roger Moore.
60s
Sean
for the most part,
Connery.
yeah. 60s tried to play it as straight-laced as they could. Although, again,
Yeah.
they did have their little moments. I mean, come on, covering people in gold after you kill them? What the hell?
Everyone has to have a signature.
I guess, but that's a little far.
Well, it's not that this... even the most outrageous things were still kind of simple. This Salamander plot seemed really convoluted with a lot of unnecessary parts.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It could have been streamlined and been made so much simpler and less detectable. And it just seemed that it was just so over the top that it bothered the hell out of me at times.
See, I'm a fan of like comics where you would turn around and all of these ridiculous, unrelated things. You turn on and and by the way, here's how they were all connected by this one overly ambitious supervillain, and that just feels like that. This just feels like that type of story to me.
Except
so
it
I don't
wasn't.
really mind that.
What was Salamander planning to do with these people once he had managed to maintain world power?
Presumably use them to either to keep the populace in fear of his predictive abilities, or just kill them.
Yeah, it just seemed to be such a loose end that it bothered me.
I wouldn't be surprised if you had some sort of gas chamber prepared for them down there, too. To be honest.
And, yeah, it seemed to be a lot, like I said, automating that would have been, so much simpler, so much easier, and would have accomplished the same thing. I mean, obviously he was using whatever device they were using to create disasters, which we never actually get revealed, by the way, other than the fact that they have it.
Well, the entire room they seem to live in seems to be a big giant machine.
Yeah, that would have been a nice scene where they come across an earthquake machine or something.
Malcolm Merlin, take notes. Yeah,
and I was about to say it was going to have a Queen Consolidated logo on it.
Yeah, you realized it the second you said earthquake machine, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Well, it is said about the same time.
More or less. But, yeah, the fact that we don't really get to see the earthquake machine, only that they're down there making earthquakes, and we don't really hear how. If we had discovered that they were a cadre of scientists he had sealed down there, and, even a line or two of dialogue could have fixed that.
Yeah,
we'd known why they were down there.
That would have made more sense.
They were scientists. They were a think tank that he had sequestered down there.
Right.
Made sense. But they didn't. They seemed to be a sampling of people because two of them had been teenagers when they went down there.
Right.
So we don't really get the feeling of, what his plan was when he sequestered this particular group of people down there.
I mean, I kind of get the feeling that whole group, was an ego boost for him, somewhere he can go and be adored and everyone can talk about how great he is.
Yeah, but still...
on Instagram before Instagram.
It still, kind of strikes me as kind of a what the fuck for this plot line. It's a major stumbling block for me. You know, how did he get them down there? How did he convince them that there was a nuclear event? You know, there's a whole bunch of unexplained questions. And it just strikes me as being rather, Flash Gordon as far as, hey, look, this happened.
To quote Batman Forever, just raises too many questions.
Yeah, I think that there should have been a later draft of this script. They should have maybe pushed the Web of Fear up and pushed this back for a revision, But, we can't tell because we weren't there. All right, so instead of doing the ugly, what I'm going to do is each of us name our favorite scene or moment.
If we're not doing the ugly, I do have to one thing kind of related to what we were talking about before, but I was kind of holding it back for the ugly mention. And it's interesting you mentioned things being cut for time.
That would be the worst point, but okay. Okay, go ahead.
Because I kind of feel, and I can't help but feel it every time I watch it, that whole subplot with the subterranean people was essentially added as padding to stretch this out to 6 episodes. It's introduced all of a sudden in episode 5, and, I mean, it ties in with how the whole thing ends, but I feel like the whole story would have just made more sense if they never felt the need to include that group.
Possibly.
It would have just been a machine.
So I do feel like it was just padding. They're like, okay, here's my script for 4 episodes. You're like, well, you have a week to make it last for 6.
Or if it had been 5 episodes and they had thrown in a 6th, yeah.
Right.
Something like that. Okay. So what is your favorite moment in the entire 6-episode serial, Tim?
The Scottish Dragon Punch.
Hadouken! Brigadoon! Yeah. Street Fighter now needs to add a Scottish character that says Brigadoon whenever he punches somebody.
Yeah, that moment.
You hear
just,
this,
made me
Capcom? Put this in
smile.
the next game. We swear we need it.
It'll be interesting.
Bonus points if you call him Jamie.
What's interesting, when I think of a mainstream thing adding a character like that, I assume it's going to be Willy from The Simpsons.
Willy!
All right. Aaron, favorite scene in the entire serial?
Actually, it's going to be towards the very end where Salamander gets sucked out of the TARDIS. That's actually a pretty horrifying way to die.
It's also a pretty horrifying way to end the serial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just like, it just ends just like that. Man, spaced by the TARDIS. No, that's me.
Sucked into the vortex. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, favorite scene?
I mentioned it before, and I'll mention it again. The scuffle in the TARDIS and that split screen where you see both Patricks looking at each other.
Yes.
Just, as a effects person and realizing what they had to work with, mind blown. What the hell?
Right.
How did they do that?
It had to be videotape, or it had to be tape or film overlay.
It must have been some sort of film overlay, yes. They must have
That's
been.
even better considering that at this point, I think they might have still been filming the week before airing, like, with no break time. Like, literally, they film it on Friday, or, they film it on one week, air it the following week. I'm pretty sure that's the schedule they were on at this point.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that there was at least a week between them to put in any model effects, but yeah.
But yeah, that had to have been a tremendous effort just to try and get that pinned off.
Yeah, it's a very big kudos to the BBC special effects department of the time. Okay, Bill.
I would say my favorite scene. Oh, well, why didn't you tell me that before? That would have been nice to know. The Doctor and Giles Kent toward the end. When you all of a sudden realize that's not Salamander, that's the Doctor, and Kent is Scrooge.
Yeah. Kent puts his foot in his mouth. Oh. My favorite scene in the entire bit. I've been questioning you guys. I didn't think about it myself. I think it would have to be Jamie's moment of James Bond. Where he comes down during the conference, knocks out the guard, and throws away the communicator, which explodes.
Yep.
Yeah.
The name's
Don't
McCrimmon.
go near that if you value
James
your life.
McCrimmon. Yeah. His come with me if you want to live moment.
Right.
Okay. So now we're going to do the ugly. The worst take a scene that almost made you groan. Either because it was over the top cheesy or it was just bad. Tim.
When at the end, when Salamander shoots Kent, and he says, "Oh, you should have thought of shooting him somewhere else where he didn't have access to the make the whole base explode lever."
Yeah.
Because I thought, why does every villain's lair have one of those things?
Why do you need that?
Yes, I have the specs for your new lair, Dr. Evil. Did you install the self-destruct lever? Yes, I'm not sure why. Never mind, I have uses for that.
So that's
All right.
why the Death Star went down so quickly.
Aaron.
I think the part where the two kids, I don't know what happened to them. They died?
The two
kids
kids.
from the underworld. The kids from the underground. Like, we never actually see what happened to them, I don't think.
Oh, after the explosion,
anyway.
yeah, you're right. I don't recall
Yeah,
seeing
it's
them.
just like, were they crushed?
They start to escape into the tunnel, and then the tunnel collapses.
So,
yeah. Except that we don't actually, we just see them holding each other as rubble falls. And it's just like, that's kind of depressing if they died, you know? Because they're like the youngest ones that were trapped down there.
They only got to breathe life on the surface for a few moments.
That was a bit of a depressed fest. I was like, what the hell? Okay, Matt.
Oh. Which one? The awkward edit. That awkward edit just as they're about to escape. I think it was at the end of episode 2 or 3.
I think I know what you're talking about. Isn't that with, like, Jamie and Victoria? And
Jamie, Victoria, and all of them, yeah, they're about to escape from Salamander's place. All of a sudden, the one guy gets shot in the back, and then there's this awkward edit, and I forget what happened afterwards. But it's just like, what?
Is this when they were surrounded by the troops that were told to shoot on sight?
Yes. No, this was when Dennis got shot in the back.
Yeah, right after he got shot in the back, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, what? And I actually literally stopped the video and rewound it to make sure that I didn't have an accidental glitch or something.
They jump cut into Astrid's room, didn't they?
Yes.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned was edited for time, I think.
I'm just like,
hell? What you didn't see was their Power Ranger wrist teleporters, and they just went back to the command center.
Okay. So, Bill.
I would have to say this scene makes me cringe every time I watch it. When what's his name, the kid, the teen, well, not I guess the used to be a teen boy. What's his name?
Colin?
Yes, that sounds right, I think. When the guy in charge of that group announces that he's going with Salamander, you know, a rational decision that the leader is going to go along with their other leader guy and see how things are going. And Colin just flips a mother load of shit. Why did you take me? Take me!
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's because he's been getting, claustrophobic squirrely down there. And he's so desperate to go up. But yeah, it was horribly overacted.
Yeah.
It's probably the one piece of acting in this that really kind of falls flat. Alright, so my least favorite bit in this entire bit is actually, I believe, in episode 1. Helicopter. They shot the gas tank. It'll explode at any moment. Yeah, that's not what shooting a gas tank in a helicopter does. Real world physics, people. If you shoot a gas tank, it'll either explode immediately
Or just leak.
or just leak out all your fuel. So,
And then we'll crash and die.
yes. But I was willing to let it slide up until the point that the bad guys then get into the helicopter and take
gas
off
tank
with it,
explodes.
and it explodes from the cockpit. I watched this explosion. I'm like,
Of
Well,
course,
maybe
don't
that's
you
where
know
they
enough
use the
science?
fuel tank in the future helicopter.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not under your ass.
That's the spare fuel tank where they keep the extra sparking materials.
You know, like the
Okay.
flint and tinder.
So that's our good, our bad, and our ugly. It is time for our final thoughts, which is right on schedule. So we will continue in this wonderful roundabout order we've been doing. Tim, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I thought the acting was good. The writing needed to catch up to the acting. Acting. Thought it was a bit slow paced, muddled, but there were seeds of a good story idea here. It just needed a few rewrites, like has been said.
Okay. Aaron.
I generally liked it. I liked the idea of the Doctor being confused for a villain, kind of a good versus evil side, which we've seen played on in New Who a lot. I also, it does have its issues. For example, it is kind of a convoluted plot that he has, that Salamander has hatched. What else? I did like quite a few of the characters, though. I mean, for what bit of fleshing out that they got. I liked Faria. I kind of wanted to hear her story a little bit more. And I liked the blonde-haired lady. I can't remember her name.
Astrid.
Astrid. Okay, yeah.
All right. Matt.
As previously mentioned, and as even Aaron mentioned again, yeah, Astrid was actually pretty good. She was probably one of the oldest female action-based heroines that I can think of, to be honest. Now that I think of it, probably not the very first, but she's definitely way up there. The very beginning and the very end of the story are really good. The middle is where we have a big lull, and also the awkward edits and so forth in that middle section. Otherwise, the visuals at the very end in particular will make up for just about everything. And also, of course, the acting is pretty good throughout, except for one or two key moments.
All right. Bill?
I should mention that we're talking about convoluted schemes not that long after an episode which assured us that the Master ensured that the Doctor spent a season and a half traveling with Clara because eventually she would get to the point where she would tell the Doctor to travel to hell. But other than that, regarding this episode, I'm generally a fan of Whittaker's writing. I do think there are some areas with some issues here, but generally I liked it. It, balanced dramatic things with comic relief, such as the chef, things of that nature. Brilliant acting. I would say this might be taking the place as my new favorite Troughton story. And I just really enjoyed watching it.
All right. For me, the writing was subpar. I do agree with Bill that I do like most of David Whittaker's stuff, but I felt this one needed to cook a little longer. I will, however, give it kudos for not being a base under siege episode, which seemed to be the majority of the Second Doctor's episodes. The directing and camera work seemed to be okay. I would say it's on par with most of the Doctor Who episodes at the time. with extra points given to that final scene that Matt loves so much, and I do agree is pretty amazing for the time given. And the acting is unbelievably good with one or two exceptions. Pretty much everybody pulls off a good job in this, and Patrick Troughton does absolutely wonderful and shines as two roles, giving him four interpretations. It's unbelievably cool to see him do so. All right. So, ratings. We all know the drill. We're pros. We do this. This is what we do now. Ratings. Tim.
Again, all things considered, I'd say this is about an average serial for me, so I'm going to give it 3.5 stars.
Okay. Aaron?
I'm going to agree and go with 3.5 stars too.
Matt?
I actually can't say I've ever seen a really bad episode of Troutman. While the writing in this one was a little bit low, I'd still say I can't really rate it down too low. Yeah, I guess I'll have to go with the 3.5.
Bill?
Well, it's no surprise that I kind of mentioned from the final thoughts. I got the impression I would be the highest one, but I am honestly, seriously thinking of this as it's not good enough to be a 5, but I think it's pretty well up there. I'm going to give it a 4.5.
All right. I'm actually going to give it between the rest of you all and Bill and give it a 4. And I would be on a 3.5, except Troughton's acting.
Yeah.
Just gives it that bonus to go up to 4. It'd probably be about a 3.76 if I was giving it in hundredths.
See, here's the key reason I paid any attention, because that's where it lands above 3.
Well, it would be a 3.5 just because of the acting of everybody else. You give me Bennick,
Except for Colin.
Except for Colin. And he was good pretty much the rest of the time. It was just that one scene. Bennick's acting and Astrid's acting would have jumped it to 3.5. Plus, Jamie and Victoria always seem to do a good job. So,
yeah,
when they're given material to do a good job with.
Correct. But that just Troughton pretty much channeling Ricardo Montalban, and then him trying to imitate himself. Try to imitate yourself doing an accent and see how well you do.
Yeah.
It is really a tribute to a guy that he's able to pull this off well. Unbelievably well. And it's really a tribute to him as an actor. So, yeah, I'll give it 4 stars.
So that gives us an average of 3.8 out of 5.
Can we all be happy with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm satisfied.
If we're comparing that to the most recent episodes we reviewed, that puts it in between Into the Dalek and Robot of Sherwood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
It's about as clunky as Robots of Sherwood.
Yeah, if the writing was snappier, it probably would have been a 4.5 or a 5. But really,
if the lull had been a much shorter lull, I probably would have been easily able to put it up to a 4.
And I mean, don't forget we do say writing, but it's the entire thing involved with the writing, because as we mentioned, I mean, even if this wasn't one of the episodes, there were enough episodes in this era where they turned around and had to take a 4-episode script and make it into 5, 6, 7 episodes, that I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt and say there's a very good chance that happened here.
Yeah, I suspect this was a 4 or 5 episode script that got boosted because another one got cut down. Another one probably got cut down by a episode or 2, and it got tacked onto this. Because they don't... You notice that the Second Doctor era was not as fond of doing, like, 2-episode scripts, like, they did with Edge of Destruction in the first season.
Right.
And I think there was another one later on. like in the Fifth Doctor era, that was a short one, like Black Orchid or
Black
something.
Orchid.
But yeah, you don't really see that often during this era, and they usually got very good at not doing it. After I think the Third Doctor era, they were very good at.
Season 7 is the last one with a lot of long stories, and that's one where they're all 7-parters. And after that, they start to cut back to more 4-parters, a few 6-parters, and then even by the Fourth Doctor era, there are even more 4-parters.
Yeah, they basically eventually by the Fourth Doctor era stumble across basically what became the rule of 4 and 6, which is you do a bunch of 4-part episodes with one 6-parter in there.
Right. And that 6-parter, I think, was usually the finale at that point.
Usually.
Sometimes, though, certain seasons it didn't. Like Genesis of the Daleks was a 6-parter, but the finale that season wasn't. So there were exceptions. Anyway, it's time for us to end.
Yep.
We'll be back next week with the serial immediately following this one, which
so
is Web
the
of Fear.
cliffhanger. Yay!
Yes, we'll see the resolution of this cliffhanger, and we'll watch the episode Beyond Web of Fear, which is, of course, with Patrick Troughton, Jamie, and Victoria, and
specialist guest Nicholas Courtney.
Yep, in his first appearance as the Brigadier.
First appearance as Colonel Lethbridge Stewart, second appearance in Doctor Who.
Yep.
Yes, that's its first appearance as Lethbridge Stewart. As Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart. Give the man some respect. He's out there in cybersuit saving the universe as we speak. We'll see you. And on that bombshell, we'll see you next week.
Play the Superman theme. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.